The gym went silent the moment the trainer hit the floor, because nobody expected a man who mopped the hallways to drop a professional fighter with a single clean punch. But the story didn't start in that ring. It began long before, in the quiet shadows where people like him were never seen, never respected, and never acknowledged for who they really were. Every morning before sunrise, the janitor walked into the MMA gym with slow, steady steps that almost blended into the hum of the air conditioners. His name was Marcus, but most people didn't care enough to learn it. They called him the janitor, the cleaner, the guy with the mop. He moved from room to room with practiced ease, wiping down benches, emptying bins, sweeping blood drops from the mats, blood that came from men who bragged about strength while ignoring the strength standing right in front of them. Marcus worked quietly, never interrupting anyone, never stepping out of line, never defending himself when someone laughed or made a joke. He just kept his head down because life had taught him early how the world treated a black man who looked like he could break you in half but chose not to. The head trainer, Carter, was the loudest of them all. Built like a concrete wall and twice as cocky, he never missed a chance to humiliate Marcus. Every morning he barked orders at him, tossing towels on the floor, kicking over water bottles just to watch Marcus bend down and pick them up. The fighters followed his lead, treating Marcus like a piece of gym equipment, useful, invisible, forgettable. Nobody noticed the way Marcus moved, the way his shoulders rolled like they had memory, the way his steps were too light for a man of his size. Nobody questioned why his hands looked like they had known gloves long before they had known mops. Nobody saw the quiet power he carried, because arrogance has a way of making people blind. But arrogance also has a way of pushing too far. One afternoon the gym was packed, every fighter fired up and sweaty, every punch echoing off the walls like thunder. Carter was showing off in the center of the mat, barking advice and flexing his ego for everyone to see. He noticed Marcus wiping a nearby bench and felt a rush of cruelty. It was the kind of impulse that came easy to him, the thrill of embarrassing someone who couldn't fight back. He called Marcus out in front of everyone, mocking him, taunting him, pushing him, urging him to step into the cage. The room filled with laughter, the kind that cuts deeper than any punch. Marcus froze for a moment, staring at the ground the way he always did when people tried to crush him. But silence only fueled Carter more. What Carter didn't know was that Marcus wasn't scared. He was tired. Tired of disrespect. Tired of the way people looked at him like he was nothing. Tired of hiding the part of himself he swore he would never use again. For years he had buried his past under long shifts, quiet nights, and worn-out shoes. But sometimes life corners you, and when it does, the truth has a way of stepping forward whether you want it or not. When Marcus finally raised his head, the gym felt different. The laughter faded, the air tightened, even the fighters fell quiet, unsure what they were witnessing. Marcus didn't strut or puff out his chest. He didn't show anger or pride. He simply placed his mop gently against the wall, the same way someone might lay down a burden they'd carried for too long. And in that small moment, the entire room felt something shift. Stepping into the cage didn't feel like stepping into a fight. It felt like stepping into a memory. The mat pressed against his bare feet, familiar and unforgiving, like the one he had trained on as a young man. Back then, he had dreams, big ones, bright ones, dreams that were crushed the moment his little brother got sick and the hospital bills took everything. Dreams he traded for long nights cleaning floors to keep his family alive. But skill doesn't disappear just because hope does. Technique doesn't fade just because no one's watching. Strength doesn't vanish just because it's hidden. Carter grinned like a man about to enjoy himself. He bounced on his toes, showing off, warming up as if he were getting ready to spar a beginner. The fighters crowded around the cage, pointing, whispering, waiting for the show. They expected Marcus to tremble, to back down, to embarrass himself. They had no idea they were standing inches away from a storm. The bell rang, sharp and cold. Carter lunged forward with confidence, swinging fast and wide, aiming for an easy finish. Marcus didn't flinch. He didn't blink. He didn't even step back. He moved like liquid, smooth, controlled, effortless. The punch Carter threw sliced through empty air, leaving him off balance for a fraction of a second. For a normal man, that moment meant nothing. For Marcus, it was enough. He shifted his weight, turned his hips, and let his fist travel the shortest path between 2 points. There was no dramatic wind-up, no showmanship, no hesitation. Just pure instinct, pure precision, pure truth. The punch connected with Carter's jaw like a hammer meeting fragile glass. The sound echoed through the gym. Carter dropped instantly, not staggered, not wobbled, dropped. The entire room froze in shock. The fighters who laughed earlier now stood with wide eyes and open mouths. The janitor, quiet, invisible, underestimated, had just knocked out the man they feared and worshipped. One hit, that was all. But Marcus didn't celebrate. He didn't pose. He didn't smile. He simply breathed, deep and steady, like a man who had finally let out a truth he'd been holding for too many years. The room felt different now, not because Carter had fallen, but because everyone finally saw Marcus for the first time. Not as a janitor, not as a nobody, but as a man who carried power he never flaunted, discipline he never bragged about, and strength he never used unless pushed too far. He stepped out of the cage quietly, picked up his mop, and went back to work like nothing had happened. But nothing was the same. Not in that gym. Not in the minds of those men. Not in the story that spread from fighter to fighter, trainer to trainer, city to city. People wanted to know who he was, how he learned to fight like that, why he hid it. But Marcus never explained anything. Some truths don't need words. Some storms don't need thunder. In the days that followed, Carter tried to hide the humiliation, but the video someone secretly recorded spread faster than he could control. Suddenly the man who mocked others was the joke of the town. Fighters questioned his skill, parents pulled their kids from his classes. His confidence cracked, and the world that once bowed to him now judged him with the same cruelty he once showed Marcus. Karma rarely announces itself, but when it arrives, it comes with perfect timing. The gym owners reviewed the footage, not because they cared about Carter, but because they wanted to know how the man they hired as a janitor moved like a retired champion. They pulled Marcus aside one evening, offering him an apology he never expected, along with something even more shocking. They wanted him to be a trainer. A real one, a respected one who would teach fighters the discipline he carried naturally, the humility Carter lacked, the wisdom that only comes from being broken and rebuilding yourself quietly. Marcus didn't answer right away. He went home that night to his small apartment, sat at his kitchen table, and stared at his calloused hands. He thought about the years he spent putting everyone else first, the dreams he left behind, the brother he cared for until the very end. He wondered if accepting this new path meant honoring his past or abandoning it. But as he sat there, he realized something deeply true. Strength isn't just fighting. Strength is surviving. Strength is waiting patiently for life to give you one more chance. And this felt like his. When he returned to the gym the next morning, the fighters didn't laugh. They greeted him with respect, some with awe, some with shame for how they treated him. Carter avoided his eyes, drowning in the weight of his own downfall. Marcus wasn't the type to hold grudges, but he wasn't the type to forget either. Life had taught him that people grow only when they face the truth, and Carter was finally facing his. Marcus accepted the job quietly. He didn't make a scene. He didn't boast. He simply changed out of his janitor uniform for the first time in years and walked into the training room with the calm confidence of a man reclaiming the life he once lost. He guided fighters with patience, corrected their form with respect, and spoke with a softness that carried more authority than Carter's shouting ever did. Slowly, the gym transformed, not just in skill, but in spirit. 1 year later, people no longer remembered Carter's knockout. They remembered the trainer who taught them discipline without ego, power without cruelty, strength without arrogance. They remembered the man who rose from the quiet corners of the gym to become its heartbeat. Marcus never bragged about the day he knocked someone out with one punch. He never needed to. The real story wasn't about the punch. It was about every moment before and after. It was about a man who spent years cleaning up after others, only to rise higher than all of them. It was about how respect can't be demanded, it has to be earned. It was about how karma has perfect aim, even when people don't. And it was about how sometimes the strongest people are the ones the world tries hardest to overlook. Marcus lived quietly, trained fiercely, and carried himself with the same dignity he always had. But now, people finally saw it. They finally saw him, and that was the real victory. In the end, the punch wasn't the lesson. The lesson was simple: never underestimate the person you think is beneath you. Because life has a way of flipping the script the moment you least expect it.